Welcome back to our channel, dear listeners. Today we have an explosive tale of forbidden love, revolution, and a human-alien bond that defies every law in the universe. Imagine standing before an entire empire, an Empress Solara, and human engineer Logan Stone fight desperately against an armed coup. But the most shocking twist comes when Solara reveals something impossible. She's carrying Logan's child. Will their love save a civilization or plunge it into deeper chaos? Listen to the end to find out. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to support more thrilling stories like this, and comment below your thoughts on their forbidden romance. Tell us where you're tuning in from. They never warned me that saving an alien empress might mean letting her destroy me first. Yet there I was, bruised and bloodied, staring in disbelief at the smoldering wreckage of the Terevian imperial palace. Alarms shrieked over the whine of half-collapsed crystal towers, and red emergency lights bathed the colossal arches in a lurid glow. Twisted beams of precious metals and shattered shards of iridescent glass lay strewn across the once immaculate courtyard. I coughed, tasting ash and dust in the back of my throat, and scanned the chaos for survivors. My name is Logan Stone, and until a few hours ago, I was just another ex-engineer from Earth, finishing a contract on Terevia, a planet famed for its stoic, orderly culture and governed by an otherworldly empress named Solara. I'd come here under the banner of a humanitarian mission, hoping to fix a few water purifiers and maybe earn enough credits to pay off my debts back home. What I didn't anticipate was being framed for a bombing that tore through the very heart of Terevia's capital city. I remember the moment everything changed. A thunderous explosion ripped through the pre-dawn stillness, launching me off my feet and leaving a permanent ringing in my left ear. Before I could stand, Terevian security drones materialized in the sky with blinding blue search beams. Those beams locked on me, Logan Stone, the hapless Earthman. My ears still buzzed when a phalanx of Terevian guards closed in. They wore silver breastplates etched with swirling alien symbols, and their eyes were hidden behind sleek visors that scanned my every twitch. Their smooth, expressionless faces reminded me of mannequins, except these mannequins carried high-voltage stun rods and had authority to use them without question. "Human," one guard's mechanized voice droned, "drop all items and remain still." I tried to explain I was there to fix the rubble, not cause it, but all that earned me was a short, sharp shock that knocked the wind out of my lungs. Next thing I knew, they clamped a restraint collar around my neck, cuffed my wrists, and dragged me through the once majestic corridors of the palace I'd accidentally helped demolish. Each twisting hallway of luminous crystal flickered with emergency lighting, like the entire structure was on life support. Even in my delirium, I recognized the irony. Earth Command had canned me for willful sabotage 2 years back, claiming I was too reckless. I'd only tried to propose a radical redesign for one of their outdated reactor backups. Now here on Terevia, I was about to be declared a terrorist again. They threw me in a cell hewn from a single block of violet-hued gemstone, polished so finely that I could see my reflection in every angle. No corners, no shadows, just one continuous curve of translucent purple. My reflection stared back with a mixture of anger and disbelief. A tall, lean man with dust-caked brown hair, wearing a torn shirt and a brand new set of plasma burns on his forearms. I tried pressing against the walls for any hidden seams or panels. Nothing gave way. Eventually, a door materialized where I would have sworn there was solid stone. Stepping through was a Terevian official with obsidian dark implants dotting his temples. His name, I would later learn, was Rurik, the judicial procurator. He wore a ceremonial breastplate strapped over shimmering robes, and his lips never moved more than a few millimeters. "Prisoner Stone," he said, voice echoing ominously in the chamber. "You stand accused of the bombing of the Imperial Palace's East Wing. The evidence is irrefutable." I stood, hugging my bruised ribs. "Evidence? I have no idea how that bomb got there. I'm an engineer, not an arsonist." Rurik handed me a tablet displaying shaky footage, a figure suspiciously like me placing some device near a crucial support column. Same jacket, same hair, but the face was partially obscured. The timestamp read half an hour before the explosion. "This is you," Rurik stated. "It's not," I retorted, leaning in. "But I know it looks like me." He responded only with a flicker of the implants beneath his scalp. "We do not suffer illusions. Turavian courts operate under immediate sentencing for verified crimes. Your case is scheduled in 1 hour. Then he mentioned something that made my stomach drop. Your mind will be reprogrammed by the imperial touch. Empress Solara herself will remove the deviance from your psyche. I'd never heard of imperial touch, but it sounded about as pleasant as a bullet to the brain. I tried to argue, but Rurik just exited through the seamless door, leaving me with a haunting promise. Few humans have undergone the touch. None have required a second. In that crystalline solitude, I slumped to the cold, smooth floor. I didn't know much about Empress Solara, aside from the tabloids that called her a figure of timeless grace and terrifying power. She ruled Terivia with measured calm, rumored to have red skin that shimmered like living coral under direct light. They said her people were biologically modified to control emotions with neural implants. They revered their empress as the pinnacle of that controlled perfection, an embodiment of Terivian logic. If there was any chance of persuading her, I'd have to speak fast, or my mind might be purged. They marched me, wrists shackled, to the high court, an amphitheater of swirling crystalline seats that rose in tiers, each row brimming with Terivians in official robes. The hush fell as soon as I was dragged into the center. I felt hundreds of eyes on me, blank stares from calm, artificially regulated minds. At the top tier sat the Archon Council, 5 individuals whose implants glowed with an intensity that made my teeth itch. Standing just below them was Empress Solara, and she stole my breath in a way no one warned me about. She was taller than I'd imagined, willowy yet commanding, her posture perfect. Her skin was a deep scarlet, glowing faintly when she moved beneath the overhead lights. Long hair the color of newly forged copper cascaded down her back, woven into intricate braids studded with gems. She wore an iridescent gown that rippled like molten silver, and her eyes, like 2 shards of polished hematite, black with flecks of gold, gazed down at me without the slightest hint of emotion. Accused Logan Stone, intoned one Archon, with swirling gold implants on his cheeks, you have been identified as the saboteur of our most sacred palace. The evidence is conclusive. Empress Solara has decreed your reprogramming. I squinted up at the Empress, resisting the urge to kneel. She seemed so alien. Not just her regal bearing or her red skin, but the complete lack of micro-expressions I'd expect in a human. I found it unsettling, like an AI wearing a living mask. Your Majesty, I ventured, voice cracking. I'm innocent. Look, I know that footage looks damning, but it isn't me. I can provide an alibi. There were other workers at the relief station. She raised a hand, and the entire court went silent. I have peered into your Earth file. You were discharged for recklessness and sabotage. It seems your nature is consistent. Her voice was low, resonant, and carried an odd melody. Your Majesty, please, I pleaded. This is a setup. Someone wants you to believe it's me. Her lips curled the tiniest fraction. We do not rely on belief, Mr. Stone. We rely on the clarity of the touch. She stepped down from the dais, approaching me as if I were a caged beast. You will submit to the imperial touch. If your mind is free of malice, it shall be revealed. My heart hammered. I'd never been so terrified, yet a strange part of me was drawn to her. The aura around her felt electric, like the air before a thunderstorm. They brought me to a smaller, dome-shaped chamber lined with shimmering tiles that radiated heat. Stenciled symbols drifted across the walls. Diagrams of Terivian neurobiology, I guessed. In the center stood a circular platform, just wide enough to fit 2 people. The imperial touch wouldn't be performed by a machine, but by the Empress in person. Now, before we continue, I want to hear from you. If you think I'm doomed the moment she lays a hand on my chest, comment 1 for a quick end. If you think there's a way I'll wriggle out of this somehow, comment 2. And while you're at it, let me know where you're watching from. I bet none of you are in a cosmic monarchy right now. They strapped me onto the platform, hooking cables from my wrists and ankles to the dais. There were Terivian technicians scuttling about, calibrating bizarre devices that hummed with energy. The Empress stepped in with the regal grace of someone who'd never hurried in her life. As she moved, her metallic gown parted to reveal slender arms adorned with swirling gold tattoos. Her face remained impassive, but the set of her jaw hinted at some internal tension. "This will not harm you," she claimed in that voice that made me shiver. "It will only reveal truth." I didn't like the sound of that. "I'd rather you just ask me questions." Her palm pressed lightly against my bare chest. The contact sent a jolt through both of us, like static electricity, but multiplied by 1,000. Suddenly I felt heat flooding my veins, my vision blurred with fractal patterns, and my pulse went erratic. Except it wasn't just my mind that shifted. The Empress's expression contorted too. Her eyes dilated, and for a fraction of a second, I swore I saw raw emotion flicker across her features. Confusion, surprise, maybe even pain. Somehow our minds connected. I sensed her presence inside my head, rifling through memories of Earth, of my father's mechanical workshop, of the day I was fired from Earth Command. It was as if she was rummaging for dark impulses, but she found something else, something that made her recoil. She staggered back, her lips parted in what might have been a gasp. The technicians stared, disbelieving. The Empress's chest heaved, and for the first time I saw her implants flicker irregularly. My restraints popped open as the machine shorted out. In that surreal moment, her gaze locked onto mine, and I could have sworn tears glistened in her eyes. The ritual chamber went haywire. Alarms blared, and the overhead lights cracked like fireworks, plunging us into strobing chaos. The Empress lurched toward a console, slapping it to silence at least part of the uproar. My muscles trembled as I tried to stand, dizzy from that mental onslaught. When the world stopped spinning, I saw her leaning against the wall, face in her hands. "What the hell was that?" I croaked, rubbing my chest. My skin felt scorched where her palm had rested. She lifted her head, eyes shining like molten gold under the flickering lights. "Impossible." Her voice, though still low and measured, carried a tremor of something deeply unnerving. "Your mind, I couldn't purge any malice. Instead, it resonated with mine." Resonated? My mind raced. "Look, I don't know what that means for you folks, but can it prove I'm not a terrorist?" She exhaled slowly, as if grappling with an entirely new sensation. "This is beyond any known protocol. My implants should have neutralized your emotional charges, but they faltered. I felt everything. Your memories, your defiance, your capacity for creation rather than destruction." More guards rushed into the chamber, guns drawn. The Empress shot them a single glare. "Stand down," she commanded, and they froze like statues. Her posture stiffened again, queenly composure returning by degrees. "Seize him. Take him to the holding cells until I determine what to do next." "What to do next?" I echoed indignantly, but the guards snatched my arms before I could protest further. "Are you telling me you're not sure I'm guilty, but you'll keep me locked up anyway?" She didn't answer, and I was hauled out. As they dragged me through labyrinthine halls, I caught glimpses of Teravia's luscious architecture, arcs of shimmering crystal overhead, mosaic floors that glowed beneath our feet with each step. But the usual hush of the palace felt charged with tension. Whispers of frightened staff, soldiers running with weapons out, confusion etched on their faces. Something had disrupted the very heartbeat of this structured empire, and that something was me. Behind me, I could still sense her presence in my mind, like an echo that refused to fade. Whatever we had just triggered, it shook her. And if Empress Solara was rattled, I doubted Terevia would remain the same for long. My second cell was more luxurious than the first, which wasn't saying much. At least this time they gave me clothes. Some Terevian tunics stitched from a silky material that felt unnervingly soft against my skin. Instead of chaining me, they posted 2 armed guards outside an ornate door. The suite itself had a bed with cushions that smelled of strange spices and a small table loaded with fruits from alien orchards. I didn't have much of an appetite. The door chimed. "Enter," I said, warily, half expecting more guards. Instead, Rurik, the judicial procurator, strolled in. He had the air of someone who'd been cornered into a job he didn't want. "You gave our Empress quite a scare," he remarked, lips tightening. I leaned against the bed frame, arms folded. "Yeah, she gave me one too." Rurik studied me carefully. "Her Majesty experiences no fear or confusion under normal circumstances. Her implants regulate all emotional extremes. She is the pinnacle of Terevian evolution. Yet somehow your presence caused a malfunction." Malfunction? I repeated, rolling the word around my tongue. We have a name for that back home. We call it being human. His implants flared with a slight hum. You will not speak so lightly. The Empress is rumored to be changed by this event. Some claim they've seen her exhibit micro-expressions. Terevians who witness such displays are alarmed. I felt a flicker of guilt. Well, it's not like I asked for it. Rurik gave a curt nod. Her Majesty has called an emergency council of archons. Your situation is under review. Until then, you remain in confinement, but you are not to be harmed. That last line seemed more personal than official. I wondered if Rurik was actually worried about what harming me might do to his Empress. Thanks for the pep talk, I said. Could you at least confirm I'm off the hook for bombing the palace? He paused, hesitating. Officially, the matter is unresolved. However, we have discovered tampered surveillance logs indicating a different timeline. That suggests you might be innocent, but innocence does not negate the threat you pose. What threat is that? His gaze flicked to my chest as though remembering the place where her hand had rested. You compromised the foundation of our society, Earthman. With that ominous remark, he turned and left. I spent the next few days in a strange limbo. Terevian doctors examined me, scanning my brainwaves and pumping me full of unpronounceable serums. Each time they left frustrated. Apparently nothing in my physiology explained why Empress Solara's implants failed. Meanwhile, the palace bustled with rumors, servants whispering that she'd locked herself away or that the Archon Council was debating removing her from power. I caught snatches of conversation through the door, gleaning that Terevian society was built around carefully modulated emotions. Once upon a time, they'd nearly destroyed themselves in a series of continent-spanning wars, fueled by unbridled passion. The solution was to develop neural implants that dampened fear, rage, lust, jealousy, basically all the intense emotional states that lead humans to do wild, irrational things. Over generations, they refined these implants into an art form, culminating in a monarchy that prided itself on unwavering logic. And Empress Solara was the apex of that evolution, an alien with deep red skin, rumored to be the first Terevian to rule with near-perfect emotional neutrality. Now that neutrality was fracturing, and I was the catalyst. On the third day, the Empress herself visited my suite. The guards stiffened at attention as she stepped inside. She wore an understated gown of obsidian black, her hair braided with silver trinkets. For the first time, I saw the faintest flush in her cheeks, an odd contrast with her scarlet skin. We have determined that you are not the saboteur, she stated, voice a bit less steady than before. Someone engineered this framing to pit Earth against Terevia, or possibly to destabilize my rule. I'm relieved to hear that, I replied softly, trying to keep my sarcasm in check. She took a seat on a low-backed chair, exhaling slowly. I owe you restitution for the days you've spent under suspicion. Yet I cannot release you. Why not? Her eyes, swirling with flecks of gold, locked onto mine. Whatever happened during the touch left an imprint on me. My implants are faltering. I've experienced dreams, a racing pulse, sudden surges of warmth. These are unknown phenomena to me. I swallowed. That's called feeling. Where I come from, we live with it every day. She clasped her hands tightly. I must request your cooperation. Another ritual. If I can understand the anomaly, perhaps it can be reversed before it spreads. Spread? That word hit me like a punch to the gut. Are you saying I'm contagious? Solara's expression flickered. We have preliminary data. Terevians in contact with you exhibit slight deviations in implant function, minor tremors, emotional flutters, if you will. If left unchecked, this could disrupt our entire planet. I had to grin, despite the gravity. So I'm patient zero for an epidemic of feeling. She pressed her eyes shut, her jaw setting in frustration. It is not humorous, Logan Stone. Maybe not, but from my perspective, it was poetic. An entire civilization so terrified of emotion they'd systematically repressed it for centuries, now threatened by a single engineer from Earth. I get that it's not funny to you, Baum, I said, but it's a lot to take in. She nodded curtly, rising to her feet. Her presence was both commanding and unsettlingly vulnerable. We begin the second ritual at noon tomorrow. Under controlled conditions, we will replicate the initial contact. Now, if you're watching all this unfold, I love your feedback. If you think I should go along with a second mind-merging session, type 1. If you believe I should run for the nearest escape pod, type 2. And seriously, share where you're tuning in from. This palace is quiet, so I could use some outside chatter. When she left, the silence weighed on me like a lead blanket. Was it even ethical to help them keep their implants functional? Weren't these people basically living in a sterile emotional cage? Then again, the alternative might be civil unrest, or worse. They'd torn their world apart once before, and maybe unregulated feeling could push them into chaos again. I slept poorly that night, haunted by dreams in which Solara's eyes blazed with color and my chest felt scalded by her touch. In those dreams, the palace burned anew, or else it turned into a giant amplifier of raw emotion that left everyone sobbing or screaming on the floor. Through it all, I sensed a deeper connection forming between us, a pull I both craved and dreaded. Morning arrived with no resolution in my mind, but as the palace staff escorted me to the ritual chamber once more, I realized that my own feelings had changed. I wanted to see her, to understand her, even if it risked everything, including my freedom. The second ritual was staged in a high-tech laboratory within the palace's core. Gone were the robed technicians. In their place stood solemn scientists wearing neural dampeners around their skulls, presumably to stave off any contagion from me. Empress Solara awaited on a raised platform, a shimmering sphere rotating above her that pulsed with arcs of violet light. "Step onto the dais," she instructed, and I obliged, swallowing my nerves. This time they didn't strap me down. Instead, she raised a slender hand, placing it lightly against my forearm. A gentle current flowed between us, less jarring than before, but every bit as intense. Our minds slid closer, though not in a violent collision. I felt her composure, her longing to regain control. She felt my curiosity, my compassion, my unspoken guilt. Then, as if an invisible barrier shattered, raw emotions surged through both of us. Solara staggered, her breath catching in her throat. I sensed her awe, her fear, and an undercurrent of something undeniably powerful. Desire. My chest clenched as I realized I wanted her too, though everything in my rational mind screamed that it was absurd. She was an alien empress, physically designed to remain distant and untouchable. Yet now her body trembled against mine, and I knew she felt the same gravitational pull. Scientists scrambled to contain the energy spikes. Data screens flickered with chaotic readouts. One called out, "Her neural regulators are failing. Readings at 220% of normal emotional flux." She groaned, withdrawing her hand. We both gasped like swimmers who'd surfaced for air. My head spun with images of her childhood, a memory of a silent coronation, of tutors praising her poise while punishing any sign of excitement or sorrow. In exchange, she glimpsed my memories of Earth, my mother's warm laughter, the heartbreak of losing a friend to a pointless war. The resonance was back, stronger now. She stumbled from the dais, signals bursting from her implants in frantic flickers. The Turivian scientists looked on with horror. One tried to approach me with a sedation kit. "Don't," Solara growled, her voice raw with emotion. "No sedation. I command it." She stared at me, half in shock, half in longing. "You'll break me," she whispered, a trembling phrase that left the entire lab silent. Then her gold-flecked eyes hardened. "But do it anyway." That phrase lingered in the air like a living thing. "You'll break me, but do it anyway." I wasn't sure if it was a plea or a threat, but I felt its weight, a challenge, an admission, maybe even an invitation. The lab doors slid open, revealing Archon Jarek, the highest-ranking member of the council, flanked by heavily armed royal guards. His implants glowed a sickly green, as if under extreme stress. "Your Majesty," he intoned, "this experiment has gone on too long. The contagion is spreading among the staff. We must isolate the human for the safety of the realm." Solara bristled, her newly awakened emotions evident in the tension around her mouth and eyes. "Step back, Archon. This procedure is not yet concluded." "Concluded or not," Jarek said, his voice artificially even, "the Council has mandated martial law if you fail to comply. We cannot allow Turavian society to be undermined by an onslaught of unregulated feeling. I saw flickers of fear cross her features. She inhaled, pressing a hand to her chest where her heart hammered against her implants. We will handle this on our terms, not yours. You might be Empress, Jarek replied, but the Council has authority in times of emotional crisis. If your neural balance is compromised, you are deemed unfit to rule. It was a coup dressed in legalese, and she knew it. Turavians rarely had the chance to orchestrate anything so dramatic, but if the entire planet was at stake, the Archon Council would stage a takeover. My fists tightened. I'd come here to fix water purifiers, not topple governments or watch an alien empress lose her throne. Yet it was my presence that lit this fuse. Solara flashed me a look I can only describe as heartbreak mingled with fierce determination. Archon, stand down or face consequences. He raised a communicator. Guards, secure the lab. In a flash, energy barriers sealed the entrances. Scientists backed away, quaking with anxiety. Another sign the emotional virus was taking hold. Over the intercom, an automated voice repeated, "Containment protocols activated." Solara turned to me, voice trembling with new depth. "We can't let them take you." "And I can't let them hurt you," I said, scanning the lab for an escape route. Whatever illusions I had about going home scot-free vanished. We were out of time. Cornered by Turavia's deep-seated fear of feeling, we made a desperate break for it. One scientist, who must have been sympathetic, tapped a hidden sequence on a console and temporarily deactivated the energy barriers. Solara seized my hand, shockingly warm against my skin, and we sprinted through the corridors. Alarms howled, lights flashed. I half expected the palace to tear itself apart all over again. Still wearing that black gown, she moved with surprising agility. But even a swift empress and a moderately fit human couldn't outrun an entire army. Sure enough, the labyrinthine hallways soon flooded with royal guards. They formed a blockade near the main atrium, plasma rifles humming in a low, menacing chord. Solara, breath rasping with foreign adrenaline, raised her chin. "I am your empress. Let us pass." Their implants flickered, uncertain. Several guards looked uncomfortable. One stepped forward. "Your Majesty, you are compromised. We have direct orders." "Do you not feel loyalty?" she snapped, eyes alight with genuine emotion. "Is your love for your sovereign not stronger than any Archon's directive?" They froze at the word love. Turavians seldom used it, not in everyday context. The guards hesitated, and in that heartbeat, I saw them wrestling with an unfamiliar emotion. The impulse to protect her at all costs. Jarek's voice crackled over their comms. "Stand your ground or face immediate court-martial." They tightened formation, the hallway behind us filled with more boots pounding on crystal floors. Trapped. Solara's hand tightened around mine. She glanced at me, panic reflecting in her eyes. I didn't have a plan, but maybe I could buy us time. "We have no intention of harming Turavia," I shouted. "Archon Jarek is using the fear of emotion to seize power." One guard wavered, lowering his rifle. Another followed suit, confusion etched on his face. Then a harsh beep from their comm units snapped them back into formation. The first bolt of plasma sizzled through the air, so close I felt the heat on my cheek. "Run," Solara whispered urgently. We dashed into a side passage, the stench of scorched metal thick around us. The corridor spiraled downward into a sublevel I hadn't seen before, the walls glowing with a faint phosphorescent stripe. Doors hammered shut behind us, each sealed by frightened staff who didn't want to get caught in the crossfire. "Where are we going?" I managed between ragged breaths. She pressed a panel that slid open a hidden route. "Somewhere we can regroup. This palace has secrets older than our modern implant system. I never thought I'd use them in my lifetime." We found ourselves in a forgotten enclave, deep within the palace foundations, lit by dim overhead crystals that thrummed with ancient energy. Dust motes danced in the stagnant air. The walls here weren't polished or symmetrical, hinting at a time before Turavia's architectural perfection took hold. Solara placed a hand on the rough stone, her palm quivering. "This section predates the emotional regulation era. My ancestors have built it as a bunker during the great conflicts. No one has been down here in centuries." She turned to face me, eyes swimming with raw feeling. "How far does your influence spread, Logan Stone? They're calling it a contagion. Others just call it freedom." I shrugged, wiping sweat from my brow. "I don't know what to tell you. Humans share emotions as easily as we share air. Maybe your implants suppress that basic connection. She nodded, a glimmer of bitterness flickering across her features. For centuries, we believed ourselves superior, unshackled by irrational impulses. Now I see what we truly lost: empathy, creativity, the bond that unites individuals in more than mere function. A wave of sorrow creased her brow. She stepped closer, and I inhaled the faint scent of exotic spices clinging to her hair. I'm overwhelmed, she admitted, voice trembling. Fear, desire, fury at Jarek's treachery. It swirls inside me like a storm, and yet I crave it. Caught up in the moment, I brushed a thumb over her cheek, marveling at the warmth of her scarlet skin. She inhaled sharply, eyes half-lidded. I'd never been this close to royalty, let alone an alien empress teetering on the verge of emotional overload. You can handle this, I whispered, heart pounding. We can handle this, but we need allies. We need a plan. She nodded slowly, exhaling. Yes, my guard is split. My council is fracturing. The entire planet might erupt in chaos if these emotions spread without guidance. I recalled how my own world balanced conflicting feelings, barely and often clumsily. But at least we had outlets: art, therapy, conversation, even wars. Teravia had none. They jumped from stoic neutrality to an ocean of sensations with no lifeboat. A beep from her personal communicator shattered our moment. She opened it, grimacing at the stream of urgent messages from all corners of Terivia. Riots in some provinces, celebrations in others. A wave of emotional awakening was cascading outward, unstoppable. By the time we resurfaced, Terivia was nearly unrecognizable. The capital city streets no longer bustled with calm, orderly citizens. Instead, pockets of fervor had erupted. Some people marched with banners proclaiming liberation of feeling, while others clung to their implants, terrified by the unstoppable tide of emotions flooding their senses. Security drones were hurled overhead, scanning for contaminated gatherings. We found a safe house in the lower district, a humble lodging used by rebellious scholars who'd once questioned the implant regime. They welcomed Solara with awe, though many believed she was compromised, no longer the perfect empress. Rumors circulated that Archon Jarek was rounding up all newly emotional Terevians, forcibly reinstalling stricter implants, and threatening to dethrone Solara publicly if she didn't comply. That's when a radical notion took root in my mind: a broadcast. On Earth, we use media to rally people or spread ideas. If Terevia was truly on the brink of an emotional revolution, maybe a direct plea from Solara, unfiltered, could guide them away from chaos and tyranny. However, Terevian broadcast networks were controlled by the Council, and the main tower was locked under heavy guard. There's a chance we can hijack the signal, I muttered to Solara, leaning over a scratched-up holomap. We need to get inside the broadcast center. From there, you address the entire planet. Lay out a path for peaceful transition. She tilted her head, her newly expressive eyes shining. A single speech can shift the tide, but not if the Council cuts us off mid-sentence. We'll need a diversion. Before we could finalize a plan, a frantic pounding rattled the door. One of the rebel scholars opened it, revealing a Terevian woman with short black hair and half-deactivated implants flickering at her temples. She introduced herself as Maran, a high-ranking security officer who once served directly under Archon Jarek. I couldn't stand by while he orchestrates a purge, Maran gasped, out of breath. He's planning a massive crackdown at dawn, rounding up anyone who tested positive for elevated emotional activity. You have to stop him, or hundreds, maybe thousands, will be forcibly reimplanted. Dawn, that's in mere hours, Solara said, voice tight. This is bigger than just a political coup, I realized. Zarek wants to eradicate free emotion altogether. If he can't dethrone you, he'll neutralize every awakened Terevian until your supporters are gone. Solara's resolve hardened. Then our timeline just got pushed up. We hijacked the broadcast tonight. Under cover of darkness, we set our plan in motion. Solara and I led a small band of rebels through half-deserted alleyways toward the broadcast spire. High above, the steel and crystal tower glowed like a beacon, ironically guiding us to the heart of Terevia's propaganda machine. Miran used her security codes to bypass the outer defenses, while another rebel named Alath fiddled with the tower's automated turrets. One misstep, and we'd be incinerated. I kept glancing at Solara, concerned about the tremor in her hands. She was controlling massive waves of emotion while also prepared to face her own counsel in potential armed conflict. Halfway up the tower, we hit a major snag. An entire squad of loyalist guards was stationed at the main broadcast control center. They recognized Solara instantly, but their implants prevented easy swaying. "Halt!" their commander barked, raising a pulse rifle. "By order of the council, the Empress is under protective custody. Surrender now." Protective custody, Solara echoed with a bitter laugh, something clearly alien to Terevian speech. "You mean imprisonment?" The guards hesitated, jarred by her emotional display. Moran seized the chance, tossing a stun grenade that erupted in a silent flash. When the light cleared, half the loyalists were down, their neural implants overloaded by the weapon's specialized EM pulse. The rest retreated in confusion, leaving the path to the broadcast room clear. We sprinted inside, sealing the doors behind us. Rows of consoles hummed with power, while a massive central camera pointed at an empty stage used for official addresses. With shaky hands, I initiated a forced override on the network. Solara approached the camera, her posture regal, yet heartbreakingly vulnerable. "You're live in 5, I whispered, wiping sweat from my brow. "Make it count." She nodded, stepping into frame. The final countdown beeped, and suddenly her image was everywhere, projected into every Terevian home, every public square. Everyone, rebel or loyalist, stopped to watch their empress. "Citizens of Terevia," she began, her voice carrying both regal command and raw emotion. "I stand before you with a confession. I am no longer the perfect embodiment of neutrality. Through contact with an Earthman named Logan Stone, I have felt empathy, fear, desire, and hope. Our society was founded on the principle that unregulated emotion led to our ancestors' ruin. But we have lived in silent stagnation, stifling creativity, love, and compassion." She spoke of the danger of extremes, that Terevia once destroyed itself in fiery wars of passion. But she also spoke of Earth, how humans balance chaos with camaraderie, how we strove to harness strong emotions for art, invention, and sometimes destructive ends. She admitted Terevians lacked the tools to handle such feelings, but insisted they deserved a chance to learn. I watched from behind the camera, heart thumping, half expecting the council to cut us off at any second. Yet the broadcast continued, and across the city, crowds gathered in public squares to watch. Some listened in awe, others in horror, but nobody could deny the authenticity in her voice. Then Jarek arrived. The control room door blew open, and he stormed in with a squad of heavily armed enforcers. "Shut this down," he snarled, implants flaring dangerously. "Neutralize the feed." Solara turned to face him, not flinching from the lethal weapons pointed her way. "Archon Jarek, your era of fear is ending." He leveled his rifle at me, maybe guessing I was the key to this so-called contagion. "You destroyed our stability, Earthman. You seduced our Empress with chaos. Your existence is a plague." Before he could pull the trigger, Marayan tackled him. The rifle discharged, sending an energy bolt that ricocheted off the ceiling. Technicians ducked behind consoles, wires sparking. I lunged to wrest the weapon from Jarek's grip, adrenaline surging. A fierce hand-to-hand scuffle erupted. Guards pinned rebels, rebels pinned guards. The broadcast feed was still live, capturing every second of Terevia's fight for its soul. I managed to knock the rifle aside, but Jarek's implants gave him enhanced reflexes, and he whipped around, striking me with an augmented blow that sent me crashing into a console. Solara cried out, a raw, human-like sound of alarm. She rushed toward me, but Jarek seized her arm, twisting it behind her back. "I could end you right now," he hissed. "A planet without its empress is better than a planet drowned in emotional anarchy." Summoning what strength I had left, I rammed into Jarek's side, forcing him to release her. Chaos continued in the background, the entire tower reverberating with blasts and shouting. But the feed was still live, Terevia watching as everything changed. For a moment, it looked like we'd lost control entirely. The camera showed glimpses of violence, and I worried the audience would recoil in terror. But then something remarkable happened. Solara stepped forward, ignoring her own pain, and placed her hand on Jarek's chest. a mirror of how she'd first touched me. "Look at me, Archon," she commanded, eyes blazing with that new depth of feeling. "You are part of Terevia's legacy. You have served our people without question. But you've been blinded by fear. Fear of repeating history, fear of losing control. Let me show you what I've seen." Her palm glowed with a faint aura as if the energy from our earlier ritual now channeled through her. Jarek stiffened, eyes wide, implants flickering erratically. A silent struggle played out on his face. Confusion, horror, a glimmer of amazement, then despair. He collapsed to his knees, shaking. "No, this is too much." Solara knelt beside him. "Yes, it is. But we can endure it together." That is what we forgot in our pursuit of cold logic, that sometimes we need each other. The rifle clattered to the floor, and the entire broadcast room fell quiet. Even the guards, now disarmed by the rebels, stood uncertain, their implants fluxing. The feed remained live, capturing the Archon's surrender and the Empress's compassion. Outside, you could practically feel Terevia holding its collective breath. And that's when I realized we had just won the most crucial battle, the struggle for hearts and minds. This wasn't about installing a new dictator or blowing up an old monarchy. It was about letting Terevians see, in real time, that emotional connection could conquer the fear that once governed them. If you've stuck around this long, let me know in the comments. Press 1 if you think Jarek deserves forgiveness, or press 2 if you believe he should face harsh punishment. And feel free to tell me where you're watching from. It might just give us more perspective on empathy. Solara helped Jarek to his feet. He was trembling, tears forming in eyes that hadn't cried in a lifetime. I see now," he whispered brokenly. "This is what I dreaded." She nodded. "And what you dreaded might lead us to a greater future than we ever imagined." In the days that followed, Terevia began a messy, magnificent transformation. Solara remained Empress, but she decreed that all Terevians should have the right to choose whether to keep their emotional dampening implants or remove them entirely. Some insisted on partial regulation, fearful of unbridled chaos. Others tore the implants out and danced in the streets, crying tears of joy for the first time in generations. Jarek, once the staunchest advocate for control, emerged as a contrite figure, assisting in the transition. He confessed on public broadcasts that while order is crucial, Terevians must no longer fear their own hearts. Archon councils were restructured, giving power to local assemblies that blended logic with empathy. In short, a brand new system was being born. I became Solara's unofficial advisor. Some called me the Empress's emotional liaison, which amused me to no end. We spent countless hours traveling from one district to another, guiding workshops on conflict resolution and emotional literacy. Every day, I introduced them to human concepts like art therapy, comedic shows, and even small-scale debates that let them vent frustration safely. Maran formed a new branch of the Guard, dedicated to upholding the Empress's decree that no one be forced into or out of emotional regulation. A civil war might have been inevitable if she hadn't acted swiftly, because not everyone embraced the new era with open arms. Yes, tensions still flared in pockets of the planet. We had riots where emotional release turned into violent rampages. We had cults springing up, worshiping unbridled passion as some new deity. But we also had neighborhoods that blossomed into lively communities of music, theater, and spontaneous acts of kindness. Slowly, Terevians learned that emotions weren't the unstoppable cataclysm they'd once feared. And through it all, Solara changed the most. She laughed freely, scolded when frustrated, showed sorrow and delight. We grew closer in ways I never thought possible, forging a bond that defied the gulf between our species. Her red skin no longer symbolized an aloof sovereign. It reminded me daily of the warmth she radiated. The unstoppable wave of Terevian awakenings had started with us, and it continued to ripple across the galaxy like a quiet revolution of the spirit. One evening, after a long day of mediation and public addresses, Solara and I stood on a balcony overlooking Terevia's sprawling capital. The skyline glowed with multicolored lights, no longer the uniform, cool luminescence of old. Instead, it pulsed with artistic flourishes, a patchwork of creative expression. Far below, families gathered on once empty terraces to share meals. Musicians tested new songs, unafraid of stirring the crowd's feelings. "You changed everything," she murmured, leaning her head against my shoulder. The setting suns painted her scarlet complexion in shades of shimmering copper and gold. Sometimes I can't believe how quickly it all shifted. I set an arm around her waist. I didn't do it alone. You made the call to set your people free to feel. She turned her face up to me, eyes sparkling with that deeper sense of self she'd found. Logan, I have something to tell you. Her voice caught. It's about the resonance between us. My heart skipped. Go on, I urged softly. Her gaze dropped, a rare sign of nervousness. Your physiology and mine, they weren't supposed to be compatible. But the touch forged a bond that transcended our biology. Our scientists can't fully explain it, but she swallowed, eyes brimming with emotion. I'm carrying a child, ours. The word hammered into me like a cosmic blow, simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. A half-human, half-Turivian child in a society still grappling with the concept of free emotions. Solara, are you okay? She nodded, tears of joy sliding down her cheeks. I held her as she trembled, laughing through sobs that felt exquisitely human. In that moment, the revolution we'd sparked seemed to extend to our future child, an emblem of two worlds merging in ways no one thought possible. If you're still here listening to this story, would you rejoice at such an impossible miracle? Comment 1 for a resounding yes. Comment 2 if you're cautious about the challenges ahead. And do share where you're from. Turivia's changed forever, and I'd love to know if you think Earth could handle such transformations. In the fading light, we held each other, hearts aligned in the precarious dance of love and hope, forging a destiny neither of us had anticipated. The next months rushed by in a blur of reforms, debates, and heartfelt breakthroughs. The old council structure was dissolved, replaced by a bicameral system, one chamber representing logic-based traditions for those who still valued regulated emotional states, and another representing the newly awakened Turivians, who championed open emotional exploration. Solara presided as Empress, but her role shifted to that of a unifying figure rather than an unquestioned monarch. We hosted roundtable talks with Earth diplomats, who arrived both curious and anxious about Turivia's societal upheaval. Some Earth officials wanted to quarantine the planet, fearful that Turivia's emotional outbreak could destabilize interstellar relations. But they underestimated Turivian resilience. With their advanced technology now paired with genuine empathy, Turivians were better prepared to handle complexities than ever before. On the personal front, Solara's pregnancy drew fascination. Turivian doctors monitored her around the clock, marveling at the fusion of our genomes. A swirl of rumored prophecies emerged from old archives about a hybrid child who might become a bridge between worlds. Solara tried to maintain rational caution, but her newly awakened heart brimmed with excitement. She often joked that I'd best be ready for fatherhood, even if half the planet wanted to turn our child into a symbol. And me? I'd never felt so alive or so tested. Each day I confronted new moral dilemmas. How to quell extremist factions who saw emotion as liberation at any cost. How to console the older generation frightened of losing their identity. And how to be a partner to the Empress in a realm that was rebuilding from the ground up. We established emotional education centers, encouraging citizens to explore anger, joy, grief, and even romantic love through workshops, plays, and communal gatherings. Turivian nights rang with the laughter of newly freed hearts. We learned music soared higher when passion fueled it, and architecture blossomed into imaginative forms once creativity was unleashed. But we also faced heartbreak. Some citizens rejected the changes, forming enclaves dedicated to reimplantation. They believed Turivia was courting disaster, ignoring centuries of cautionary history. We negotiated with them too, ensuring that no one would be forced to remain awake, as many Turivians had started calling it. Choice became our guiding principle, the cornerstone of the new Turivia. On the one-year anniversary of the palace bombing, the catalyst for this entire chain of events, Turivia held a commemoration ceremony in the newly rebuilt atrium. Hundreds gathered under skylights of prismatic crystal, each panel depicting a scene from Turivia's rebirth. The day of the broadcast, the moment Solara knelt beside Jarek, the riots that flared but calmed, and the quiet triumph of citizens reclaiming their right to feel. Earth dignitaries joined the crowd, mingling with Turivians who wore a dizzying array of personal fashion. The once uniform populace had become a vibrant tapestry of individuality. At the center of it all, Empress Solara stood on a raised platform, radiant in a gown that mingled Terevian tradition with modern flair. Her red skin glowed warmly in the lights, highlighting the gentle curve of her pregnancy. She spoke of unity and diversity, of forging a path that balanced logic and emotion. She acknowledged the hardships, the chaos, the violence, but also the extraordinary creativity and empathy that had blossomed. She promised that Terevia wouldn't abandon reason, but nor would it ever again banish feeling. I watched from the sidelines, heart swelling with pride and a healthy dose of incredulity. Who would have guessed that I, Logan Stone, a down-on-his-luck engineer from Earth, would end up at the heart of the greatest cultural revolution in Terevian history, and father a child with an alien empress whose world once viewed me as a walking contagion? After her speech, she invited me to the stage. A hush settled as I took her hand, feeling the warmth and the soft tremor that never entirely left her. "We have learned," I said, clearing my throat, "that fear of emotion can be more destructive than emotion itself. And when we connect on a genuine, honest level, we become something greater than the sum of our parts." The applause was thunderous. In that moment, I felt the new Terevia, an evolving tapestry woven from centuries of caution and an infant dream of freedom. It was a precarious balance, but we chose to believe it would hold, shaped by hearts willing to risk pain for love. As Solara and I left the stage, she leaned close and whispered, "We'll break again, many times. But each break leads us toward growth." I couldn't argue with that. If you followed our story this far, tell me. Type 1 if you believe Terevia will thrive in its emotional renaissance, or type 2 if you suspect the pendulum might swing back to control. And of course, let me know from which corner of the universe you're watching. Our story doesn't end here, it's only just begun.